Shalom. We're going to continue our study tracking the seed of the serpent, and more specifically, this part of the study, tracking the seed of Esau and the seed of Jacob. We've spent a couple of sessions talking specifically about Esau. We're going to do one more on Esau, and then we're going to do several sessions on Jacob. As we do the study, we are moving with the understanding that in these times, the Most High's will is being manifested. We hear a lot about the word prophecy and prophetic and what those words mean. And they do have several meanings, but the one that I would like to focus on is that prophecy, as our study is dealing with it, is the revealing of the heavenly purpose of social, political life and realities. I'm going to say that again. Much of prophecy is the revealing of a heavenly purpose for and of social, political life and the realities accompanying it. So as we look at prophecy in these studies, in this series of studies, that's why we're looking at it, because the Most High has a will for his people and for his planet that he has made known. Many of us cannot see that or do not see that, but he gives it to us in the form of prophecy, which is where the prophecies of old have a place for current reality. Okay, so prophecy is the accurate prediction of the consequences of our actions individually and of people groups. We have been talking about Esau and Jacob, so let me give an example of that. Before they were born, the Most High said to their mother, "You've got two nations in your womb. That's why there's a fight going on, because those two nations represent two different kinds of people." One of the kinds of people represented in her womb was the seed of the woman. The other kinds of people represented by the twin are the seed of the serpent. They actually were in the same womb. They came from the same mother. They came from the same father. So we're not talking about individuals. We're talking about a trajectory that is based on that person, that people group's relationship, the will of the Most High. And there are always two responses to his will. One response is to be a participant with the Most High in carrying out his will in a positive way. The other response is to be an active resistor of the Father's will. And that's what those two children represented. This is important because we're not really talking about bloodlines in this presentation, in this series, because they both came from the same bloodline. We're talking about responses in this world to what the will of the Most High is. Okay, so regarding Esau and Edom, since that's who we've been talking about, the scriptures say that the Most High hated him. And it's not because of his personality. It's because of the actions and the ramification of the actions of Esau and those who are in the line of Esau. But again, that does not mean that everyone who is a bloodline descendant of Esau is automatically hated by the Most High. Esau was hated because of how he moved, not because of the Most High just deciding, I don't like you. Okay? So, as we move forward into this lesson, we're looking at him sort of chronologically, and that's where we have been talking about this for several sessions now. But I do want to jump ahead and mention that when Yeshua gave a lot of the parables, many of the parables that he spoke were referring to the offspring of Edom. I'm sorry, the offspring of Esau or the Edomites. So it's more than just what two Old Testament brothers had as a negative interaction. This has to do, again, with their trajectory in the larger scheme of things, or in the larger picture of redemption that the Most High has for his people. So, for instance, if we remember Malachi chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, this is the first time where we hear the scriptures say, I loved Jacob and I hated Esau. If we jump down to verse 4 of Malachi chapter 1, I'm just going to read what that verse is. It says, whereas Edom says, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. They shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Most High has indignation forever. Now, he first said that in Malachi chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, but it's repeated in Romans chapter 9, Paul's letter to the Romans, verse 13, and it's also repeated in the letter to the Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 16. So that prophetic word continues to play itself out. The spirit is called Edom or Esau. The spirit is called Jacob or Yasharel. But it's not necessarily identifying the individual souls who may be under those bloodlines. Okay. So, but we do find in Genesis chapter 36, verse 8, that Esau's other name is Edom. He is the father of the Edomites. And that's what most of this particular session is going to be talking about. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 5, Edom or Esau has been given Mount Seir, and that's a land where the people who lived in caves dwell. Actually, they were called the Horites. Esau actually took that land from them. We talked about this before, but that land was just south and east of the land that was allocated to Judah, the line of Judah, the tribe of Judah. Okay. And in Ezekiel chapter 35, verse 15, Edom is called by another name, Idumea. So Idumea, Edom, Esau, they're all the same. They all speaking to the same spirit. Or I at this point we can even say the same person that was in the womb fighting with his brother Jacob. His name is Esau, his name is Edom, and his name is Idumeah. Actually, the name Idumeah is a Greek pronunciation of Edom. Okay, but it's also a territory. So all those things are in play. In Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 13, in Amos chapter 1, verse 12, two other names are mentioned, Basra and Teman. Those are both the offspring and the offspring tribes and groups from Esau. Jeremiah 48, verse 8, Dedan is another one of the descendants of Esau. And then again in Isaiah chapter 21, Duma is mentioned, which is the same thing as Idumeah. Timonites, Amalekites, other descendants of the 12 dukes of Edom are found. And that is also recorded in Genesis chapter 36, verses 11 through 42. So when it comes to understanding Esau and Edom, we see from Malachi actually up through Hebrews, and actually it's even further than that. So from these scriptures that are before you now, these are all examples of the seed of Esau, the seed of Edom. And they're listed in those various biblical books, starting all the way in Genesis, coming in through Deuteronomy, the prophets, and then the beginning of the prophets, and then finally the end of the prophets, all talking about Esau. So Esau, the point being, Esau is a major player. That's why we're spending the time on understanding who Esau is. His name has been Esau. His name is Edom. His name is Idumeah. But his purpose has consistently been to be out of the willingly out of the will of the Most High, and in many cases operating against the will of the Most High and hating his brother who the Most High has blessed. So all that went all the way back to Genesis. That's the beginning of the understanding of Esau. And again, this mixing began when Esau was a young man. He mixed with the Hittites, he mixed with the Canaanites, which were all people groups around the area where he and his family lived. And the Most High's instruction to Esau's parents was, don't mix with these other people, and definitely don't let your children take wives from these other people, because if they do, they're going to worship the same gods that their wives worship. But eventually the Edomites were made into their own province, and this is in 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 14. Now in the Jewish Encyclopedia, it says that Edomites were incorporated into the Jewish nation, and their country was called Idumea. I talked about that very briefly before. Now this name that's on the screen now, John Hyrcanus, actually it's Johann Hyrcanus. It says he conquered Edom and forcibly converted them to Judaism. I'm going to read a little bit about him. This is where studying scripture and studying the society that produced the scripture has great value. And this is why we keep saying the Bible is not a Western European book. It was not generated, it was not written by Western Europeans. It was not written to Western Europeans initially. It was written to people who lived in Northeast Africa, okay? Or some people say Southwest Asia. But in any case, when those people read scripture, they were reading from their cultural understanding because that's what scripture was written in. One of the things about the Bible in Malachi, between Malachi and Matthew, there is a 400-year time span. And some people have said that there was no word from the Most High in those 400 years. That is not the case, but I understand why people are saying that. But though during those 400 years there were things going on. One of the things that was going on was the people who lived in Judea had been overrun by a number of nations. One of them being again the Babylonians, but also the Greeks. And specifically Alexander the Greek. He divided up once, right before he died, he divided up his kingdom into his 4 sons, okay? One of them whose name was Ptolemy. And that son had jurisdiction over what we would call Northeast Africa, or which included Egypt. Now, I'm only mentioning that because during this time, the people who lived in Judea were not necessarily okay with that. Okay, so there were many uprisings. We read about some of them, but some of the uprisings that we know about were not recorded in what we have as the biblical canon, but it is in Maccabees. Okay, there's this family called the Maccabees. So I'm going to read just a little bit about this man named Johann Hyrcanus. He was born 175 BC and he died 104 BC. He was a high priest and a ruler of the Jewish nation from 135 to 134. From 134 to 104 BC. So basically, he ruled he was high priest and ruler until he died. Under his reign, the Hasmonean kingdom of Judea in ancient Palestine attained power and great prosperity, and the Pharisees, a scholarly sect with popular backing, and the Sadducees, an aristocratic sect that comprised the priesthood, became well-defined religious parties. So when we read in the New Testament about Jesus' confrontation with the scribes, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, those groups actually began to get legs in and around 120 BC, before the Common Era. All right. So, and it was underneath Hyrcanus that happened. Hyrcanus was the high priest. Now, we've talked about in previous lessons how the Most High, when he set up the protocol for his kingdom, he set it up with him being the king. So the highest office in the nation of Yasharel was not the king's office, it was the office of the high priest. And that office was populated by individuals that the Most High, who's the king, appointed. That's how Aaron and his family became the family of the high priest, and eventually became the Cohen, the family of Cohen. Okay, so Hyrcanus was, I'm sorry, Hyrcanus was the son of Simon Maccabeus. Remember that word, the Maccabees. And thus he was a member of the Hasmonean dynasty, so called after an ancestor named Hasmoneus. In 137 BC, he and his brother Judah commanded the force that heroically repelled the invasion of Judea by the Sendible, the general of the Syrian king Antiochus, in 135. Antiochus, In 135, Hyrcanus' brother-in-law, Ptolemy, the governor of Jericho. Remember that name from Alexander the Greek? Okay, this is his son. Okay, so the governor of Jericho assassinated Hyrcanus' father and two elder brothers. Hyrcanus then succeeded to the high priesthood and the supreme authority of Judea. See, that's what we were talking about before. Now, this is all happening again during that period of time in which the Bible that we have doesn't have a record. But it wasn't like society stopped functioning, okay? And a lot of what was going to go on after Malachi and into Matthew is a result of what we're reading here, which is why I'm reading it. So the remainder of his reign was marked by his efforts to punish his enemies, ward off the Syrians, and enlarge Judea's boundaries. Although he struggled in vain to destroy Ptolemy, he successfully thwarted the Syrian incursions by alliance with Rome and conquered the unfriendly neighboring territories of Samaria and Idumea. He forced Idumea to convert to Judaism, the first example of conversion imposed by the Jews in their history. Okay, so why was all of that being read? So that you could see that the reason why Idumeans or Edomites call themselves Jews is because they were forcibly converted to Judaism. It's like what the people in that are followers of Muhammad did when they would go into other lands and forcibly make people join Islam. It's the same thing. This was going on, and it started with, it started with Hyrcanus. Now, one other thing. In another, I think it's in the Encyclopedia Britannica as well, but if you look up Hyrcanus's family, what history tells us is that they were not connected to the Davidic line, nor were they from the tribe of Judah. Okay, so this Hasmonean dynasty that was in a position of rulership of Judea, they weren't Jews either. Okay, so this is the foundation that Yeshua walks into when he begins to do his ministry. So we're going to stop there and then pick up on this story in the next